pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front row. Burn bright. You're blinded now, can't see the fight. Smoke and mirrors, they lead the way. Fooling hearts night after day. Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front row. Painted faces, masks of stone. A hollow laugh that chills the bone. Trick a cruel machine. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Or just believe it? Welcome to the show, it's all pretend.
There we go. Okay. Technical difficulties real short. Now we got it going. Alright. Episode 25. Stolen Land. The narrative that never finishes the story. They say it's like a confession. Right? Especially right now. Over the weekend. Right? A lot of people. We live on stolen land. We live on stolen land. It's printed on posters, it's whispered at award shows, it's repeated by people like celebrities who stand on gated estates worth tens of millions of dollars. But nobody ever asks the obvious follow-up question, which would be, if the land is stolen, then why are you still standing on it? Right? If you're here being a virtue signal toward the rest of society, then why are you still here? If you think the land is stolen, you need to move away. Give it up. right? But that's not going to happen. So tonight, we're not here to chant. We're here to look and audit history with no slogans, just facts, timelines, and consequences, because systems don't collapse from lies, they collapse from half-truths. Welcome to Breaking the System. So let's look at before the United States. Let's start where this conversation is always quietly cut off. So before Europeans arrived, North America was not empty. But it also wasn't unified, it wasn't peaceful, and it wasn't static. Okay? What was it? We have hundreds of different tribes. We have constant migration because these tribes were nomadic. We had, in certain areas, territorial warfare. So certain tribes would compete against other tribes for territory. And we had conquests and displacement that happened. And so land changed hands through force and through victory, just like everywhere else on Earth. Okay? So when someone says this land belonged to indigenous people, the honest question is, well, there's actually a couple. Which tribe? Which year? After which war? Okay? And that question doesn't erase injustice. It just prevents mythology. Because history didn't begin when Europeans arrived, and it doesn't pause for modern feelings, right? We can't just pick a point in time and be like, oh, well, we're going to start history from this point of time, and everything moving forward, right, needs to live off these laws or these rules or these obligations, right? It's not how the world works. So now let's move to when the Europeans arrived. And some would say that Europeans arrived with a system and not a particular soul. Europe didn't arrive morally superior. It arrived organized. And by that I mean that the Europeans brought something that a lot of the tribes and the indigenous people who ever lived here before Europe didn't have. And that would be things like a written law, religious authority, military power, and the doctrine of discovery. And that doctrine said that land that was not ruled by a Christian sovereignty could be claimed. Brutal, yes. Hypocritical, absolutely. But this was how almost every empire on Earth expanded, through one of these different ideas, right? Through written law, religion, military power, or through some type of doctrine. And when we look at some of these other ancient civilizations, look at Rome. Look at how Rome expanded. You don't see the Romans going back and being like, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't expand. We should give this back because it's, needs to go to these other people. No. So Rome has done it. China has done it. Look at the Ottoman Empire. Look at the Aztecs. So history is filled with all of these different empires in different places that have expanded into different territories, and you don't hear a lot of people that's not from the United States being like, oh, well, you're living on stolen land, we should give that back. No, that's not how the rest of the world works. That's not how history works. Okay? History didn't reward innocence. It rewarded things like power. That doesn't justify the abuse, but it does destroy the fantasy that America invented conquest. Like, we did not invent conquest. That was developed long, long ago, before America was ever founded. So now let's enter where America comes into the picture. So the United States did not conquer the entire continent in 1776. Okay? It inherited the territory from Britain, or we basically pulled away from it. So Britain seceded the land. Native nations were not consolidated at the time. That was the original fracture, right? In the beginning, we had 13 colonies, and that's what America was, okay? And from that point forward, the United States claimed sovereignty over land it did not fully control and spent the next century enforcing that claim. Some of that enforcement was legal. Some of it was immoral. Yes, some of it was criminal, even under U.S. law. But all of it happened, okay? And I think a lot of people forget that this can still happen today. The government can come in, and as long as they have a well-documented idea, they can come in through what's called eminent domain, and they can legally take your land, your house, everything that you have bought, right, from you through eminent domain. That's no different than what we did hundreds of years ago, okay? We could do that today. It can happen to you tomorrow. A great example of this would be the Grain Belt expansion that they've tried to do from Missouri through Illinois into Indiana. They've put a stop to it for a while, but I think it's back in the books where the company that's wanting to put in those massive power lines are wanting to take over the land through eminent domain, through the government, in that it would benefit a greater majority of citizens than just you owning your land outright. And it doesn't matter if you are a homeowner, if you're a renter, if you are a farmer, right? They can do this to anyone, okay? And it doesn't matter what the land is. If it's forest, if it's farmland, if it's just a house, whatever. Like, they can come in through eminent domain, and they can take it from you, okay? So let's just get that out there. So who got what and how? And so this is where some of the slogan collapses in this whole idea. Let's look at the Louisiana Purchase. It was bought from France. France didn't control most of it. Native tribes lived on it. So legal ownership and reality were not the same thing, right? Even though we bought all of that land from France, France didn't own all of it, but we still bought it, which makes it ours, right? And it's not like these native tribes could come back and take it back over, right? Because we've got the Indian removal. Certain treaties were broken. Courts ignored those things. We had military force that was used. And so I think this is where some people get the idea of stolen land, and that's where the argument is the strongest, and yes, that is undeniable. But that still doesn't erase the fact that every other culture that we've talked about has done the exact same thing. So if we have to give up our land because it was stolen, then parts of Rome, parts of Europe, parts of China would have to do the exact same thing. Like, okay, it's not going to happen, right? Then we have the Mexican-American War. Land taken through war, and part of it was through a treaty. It was accepted globally at the time as a good practice. Once again, indigenous people were displaced, this time under a new flag, right? Under the United States flag. And then we have the Black Hills. That was guaranteed by treaty because gold was discovered. Land was seized anyways, and even the Supreme Court admits that it was legal. So yes, some land was stolen. But like we said, here's the line that nobody wants to cross. Some land was acquired the same way that every civilization on Earth has acquired land. And so, if I am supposed to give up my land because it was stolen, then that means you have to give up your land because it was stolen. It means everyone has to give up their land that was stolen. Okay? So that's not going to happen because every civilization on Earth has acquired land at some point, at some time, through all of these different things that we've talked about. So in comes the huge problem. And this is what I call the celebrity problem. Because these are typically the loudest voices, and these are the voices that get repeated. And it's not just celebrities. Okay? Well, when we talk about celebrities, it just is not just actors. It's musicians, it's elites, basically people that have money, right? Not people like you and I. Okay? And what else are these people? Well, these people are who own massive estates. And so like a really good one right now is Billie Eilish. She came out over the weekend and said that, we're living on stolen land. But yet she lives on a $14+ million estate that has like 2 or 3 walls built around it that's so tall that you can't see the majority of the house. She lives in an entirely different world than the rest of society, right? Okay? So they own these massive estates, and they sit on land worth more than entire towns some of the time, right? And a lot of these elites, they guard it with private security. They have their own private walls, even though they're not for a closed border. Pretty fucking ironic, isn't it? Right? Okay. And a lot of times they pass it down to their children because they can. So they'll open an award show by acknowledging stolen land and then go home to a mansion that they'll never give back. They'll never be like, oh, here you go. You can have it. I'm done with it. It was stolen. You guys can do what you want to with it. That's not accountability. All that is a moral theater, right? That's what these people are paid to do. They're actors. They're celebrities. They're paid to be a moral theater. Remember in episode 18 when we talked about what was the foundation of Hollywood built on? It's built on selling the masses stories. Okay? It's theater. So when these rich elites get on TV and you and I or whoever, the masses, watch these people, right? And they talk about these things, they expect you and I to do this stuff, but they will never reciprocate that, right? Rules for thee, but not for thee. Okay? We've talked about that before. So because if they truly believe that the land was illegitimate, the only honest response would be that they relinquish it, that they give it up. Okay? But that's not going to happen. They're not going to relinquish it. They're not going to redistribute their land. They're not going to leave their land. It's all a performance. And for them, and for a lot of people, okay, a lot of the mass that don't ask critical questions, that don't think outside the box, or don't think at all, right? That performance is safer than truth, okay? And I'm not calling anybody stupid by saying that people don't think. I'm saying that people don't critically think. We don't ask the hard questions. And then when we come up with a hard answer, we don't accept it. Okay? And there's a lot of us, me included, right? We don't ask the hard questions because performance is safer than truth, right? Think about it. When we watch movies that a lot of these Hollywood actors and musicians and whatnot, these elites play in, a lot of them, like Star Wars and The Hunger Games and a lot of these others, we watch it for the side of the little people, the civilian, the rebel, okay? And that they're trying to overthrow this criminality, this dictatorship. And a lot of times it really does wait till the very, very last moment, the critical, pivotal point within history. And then the rebels win. But for some reason, in reality, that we don't make that shift. We don't make that connection, in that all of these systems that we talk about are interconnected. Okay? These celebrities, they get paid to pass on their moral theater, their moral judgment to us, the civilians, and expect us to do these things. Okay? That's just how it is. Right? So, if we accept the phrase stolen land as an absolute truth, what comes next? Do we undo the border? Do we not have a border? We've seen how that goes, right? And not just for us, not just for the United States. Let's hypothetically say no border anywhere within any country, within any county, even within the land that you currently live on. So, if there's no borders anymore, if I wanted to come over to your house, walk through your yard without permission, open your door, go into your house without permission, because I can do that, there's no borders now, keep in mind, and I could just rummage through your fridge. I could sit on your couch, I could watch your TV, and I could sleep in your bed, because there's no borders. Would you be fine with that? Most people would say no. No, I don't want you sleeping in my bed because it's mine. I don't want you eating my food and going through my refrigerator because it's mine. I don't want you stepping into my house because it's mine. Those are borders. If we undo borders, we have to undo all borders, and that's not going to happen. Okay? So next, do we evict generations? If you are a generational landowner, maybe your father had land that passed on to you, and your grandfather passed land on to your dad, and so on and so forth. So it's generational land. Somebody had it before them, right? Where'd they get it from? Is that land stolen as well? Yeah, at some point it was. So give it up, right? Do we rewrite history to an arbitrary year? Do we look back and say, you know what, I think the year 1550 sounds good. Whoever owned the land in 1550, that's where we're going to go to. That sounds pretty stupid, does it not? Okay, that's not going to work either, right? Let's think about this stuff. Do we decide which conquest counts and which doesn't? Do we decide, because of military might over the years and the land that maybe the Ottomans conquered, or the Romans conquered, or the Aztecs conquered, does that count? Does it not count? Where do we start, right? So in reality, history offers no clean rollback, because here's the reality that no one wants to face. Every nation on earth sits on land that was taken from someone at some point within history. Okay? Think about it. If stolen land invalidates legitimacy, then no country survives this accusation. we can't live on an island by ourselves and expect that anyone that comes to the United States has to give up their land. Like, you personally cannot own land. It's got to be free for all, and we're just going to go back to the nomadic times because that's just who we are as elitists, right? That's just who we are as celebrities. Okay? No one's going to do that. Be honest with yourself. Stop lying. Okay? Stop trying to virtue signal and then you don't follow the same signal that you're trying to send out to the masses. So in conclusion, acknowledging history is not the same as surrendering the present. You could admit injustice without erasing your right to exist. The United States was not born innocent, but it was not born uniquely evil either. Right? What's dangerous is not history, it's a story told without an ending. Because a population taught it has no moral right to stand anywhere will eventually stop standing for anything. And I think that's a key one. There's a lot of people, and keep this in mind because we're going to talk about this all throughout this podcast. There's a lot of people in a lot of places higher up that would love nothing more than to see the idea of the United States fall and to falter and to become no more. Okay? And just like in the last podcast we talked about when we took the Bible out of school, there's no moral teaching. And if we have no moral right to stand anywhere on any ground, we will eventually stop standing for anything. And that creates total chaos. So truth doesn't ask you to kneel forever. It just asks you to understand. And understanding is the first step toward responsibility, not collapse. Okay? So this really is not about stolen land. It's about stolen thinking. They want you to think their way. They want you to live their way. And by their way, they're not going to live the same way that you live. Because reality is that the elites, the rich, even though we all live on Earth, they live in a total different reality than the masses. They can, and they do. So it's about stolen thinking. They don't want you to think for yourself. They don't want you to think critically. They want to tell you what to think and how to think and when to think. Okay? Because it's easier to control us if they do. Or if we do. And that's what we're here to break. And with that, this is Breaking the System. You guys have a good night.